So, John, here we go. So, what is literacy to you? What do you see it?
Literacy to me really revolves around meaning more than anything. I think of it as how we communicate and the ability to do so or not do so. And that's, I guess, that's the way I see literacy. And I try to do it as much as I can, and I try to do it as well as I can. But sometimes it, because of whatever factors, it doesn't work as well or it doesn't happen. And but that's how I see literacy. I see it as a meaning or communication thing. Um, I I guess it came from myself. It came. I found it to come sort of the highlight of lately. I've done a lot of traveling lately, and actually being forced to communicate in a different language and having even a rudimentary ability to do so is just, it really is highlighted for me the whole idea of, to me, that's what having any bit of literacy in a language is being able to communicate. If it means, getting something to eat or, taking me to the train station or whatever. So anyway, that's
So it's just pretty much like the communication.
right. It's the communication element. That's to me, to literacy to me, and a lot of times you see it spoken or you see it referred to in a more literal sense as being able to read or write. And I guess for myself, it's more communication and meaning than it is just reading and writing kind of thing. So,
Totally makes sense. So, how do you see the light in your life in that probably found?
well, no, I just, as I mentioned, I'm traveling lately, and I've been forced to try to do it and try to find the words and the phrases that I need to use to make
Try to do
to
it.
get something to happen, to get across town or to get to the train station or to the airport or whatever like that. And I've spent a lot of time um, trying to do that, and I've it kind of comes back to
I try to do that. You mean like you're getting the message across?
right, exactly. I mean, just literally communicate. I mean, just to be able to in a simple sense. And so, and I've never having being in a American that was born here and lived here. I've never really had the opportunity to do that.
Or you probably didn't ever think that you would have to.
So you're never in that position, and so you just even though you've taken lessons because or you've taken classes because we all do here in the U.S., but you never actually have the opportunity to use it, so it's not a real thing. Even for yourself. I mean, you mentioned in Bangladesh. I mean, English is an academic subject, and here any other foreign language is purely academic because you never ever use it. You're never going to have the opportunity to.
Pretty much.
So
Totally makes sense. So your first memory of like learning something?
well, for me, it's been language was just so I never really thought about language until when I was a kid in seventh grade. My parents, my dad got a job for a year in Africa, and so we moved to Africa for a year, and I was just out of sixth grade, out of elementary school here, and I was put into a class of people that it was a French class, and I had never studied a foreign language in my life, and it really opened my eyes to. That was the first time that I'd really seen language, because prior to that, it's just you just do it, you don't think about it, and it's like, oh my god, and you actually sit and it's like there's how the verbs work and how the nouns work. It's like that was just like a whole new. Oh my God! Never even thought about it. It was just something. It was a tool, and you just use it, and you don't ever think about how the tool works. Exactly, yeah. And when I was put in that position, it was just like, and especially since the fact that I was put in second year, and so I was behind. I was way behind already, and so it's like, oh my God, trying to catch up, and then it was like, it was so new, so it was very interesting. Yeah. hmm
So, how did that affect you? I mean, who you are today, I mean, especially when it comes to the writing process thing.
I never really. It never. I spent once I started with French, I took it and I never stopped. I mean, I went through high school and college. I did I did the conversation classes and 4 years of it in college. So I mean, I spent lots of time in it and did it for years. But I never went any place that ever had it. And this past year, for the first time, I went to, or for this year, earlier this summer, I went to Morocco, and I was expecting that people would speak in Arabic, and I got there, and it's like, oh my God, nobody knows Arabic, and everybody spoke French, and it was an eye-opening experience, and I was there spent time with two Americans that were fluent in Arabic, and they couldn't communicate with anybody. And we go to restaurants, and the people in the restaurants had no idea what they were saying. And I was looking at the menu, and they're like, oh my God. And it's like, it's in French, and for the most part, I could read it. And I was just like, well, this is what, I was just kind of, for the first time in my life, that 10, 12 years of French training actually paid off. And it's like, oh my God, it's right there and you can actually use it. I found myself talking to taxi drivers, and it was an amazing experience because it's been 20 years since I had it, or 30 years. And so anyway.
So what you're saying, using the language.
Right. Yeah.
Learn for a while instead of totally.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. To me, the whole literacy thing and the meaning of communication is actually, because for me, English is just something so given, and I don't think about it, and I never have. And so it takes something outside of what is known to me to actually, like say, be striking enough to see what it is. And so that's what's happened with French and other things like that. So what happens for myself now, I did some traveling prior, and for the last 7 years I've been studying Italian. And so the only materials that I read in English nowadays are Stuffers classes.
Oh.
I mean, books, all I read is, I read things in Italian, or nowadays I read French again. But I don't, just because of that meaning thing and trying to, get better at the meaning and getting better at the understanding. Right. The literacy in another language to me is very, very important. It's like the bucket list thing. And that for me that's all that matters, is having another language, too. Or, so anyway,
Great.
so.
Great learning culture.